So my name's Michelle Mascarenhas Swan, and we're here in Berkeley, California, which is part of the Bay Area, San Francisco Bay Area. And I wanted to show you a little bit about sort of how I, my family, and increasingly my kind of extended familia community of folks are trying to ground ourselves in where we live in a way that is intentionally learning from and with the place that we live in. So maybe we can walk around and I'll show you a little bit. The first thing I should say is that we're trying to grow and produce much more of the food that we are consuming ourselves. So we moved in here about 3 years ago, and, is that right? Yes, 3 years ago, and this yard was just all grass and then a few roses around the edges. And so what we started with is trying to build, raised beds, garden beds that could be really productive for food, but then also provide habitat for bees and for butterflies and for hummingbirds. And you'll see as we walk around, probably we'll get a glimpse of that. And we've seen lots of birds come into the area that we hadn't seen the first year that we were here. But it's also a really important way for our kids, which I have 2 kids, to learn about like my older daughter is 5 and she's not afraid of bugs and spiders, and she, they eat from the garden. They're eating strawberries right off the plant, eating basil, eating herbs. They're like, their taste buds are really alive, I think, with the flavors of the earth, as a result of having access to our own garden and seeing the way that plants grow. Basically we planting tomatoes and whatever seasonal, but then also are trying to just let plants reseed themselves so that nature does its own work, and if we can learn from that and be and just like support it in whatever way, adding a little compost here and there, watering, and I'll show you some more about the watering stuff, then we can do this in a pretty effortless way. So the first year I was like planting, new plants, digging everything up and trying to like replant a whole bunch of more new plants. And this year, and in successive years, especially since I have my second baby, what I started to do is just let plants go to seed. And what I found is that we got 20 kale plants, in an area the next year or this year. So here's a bunch of cabbage that was just came up from its own seed, cabbage and kale, and so that was very little effort for me, which as a parent is great. And then there's chickens that we got about 5 months ago, which are now providing us with about 3 dozen. We have 6 chickens, and they're providing about 3 dozen eggs a week. And we also, of course, get then the fertilizer that they produce, which goes back into the garden on the beds. The hay is just tossed onto the beds, and then slowly, fertilizes the soil back again. So we're trying to create, our own kind of systems that are less labor intensive, because we all work and we all have kids, and so, but then also, are about cycles. So about really trying to throw as little away as possible, but actually solve problems by, one problem can also be an opportunity. So learning from that. Sounds like somebody's laying an egg right now. It's very exciting. So one thing that we just recently did is install a gray water shower and composting and gray water sink and a composting toilet in a kind of back in-law unit or cottage that that was here as storage before. So we put in this shower, which is very lovely and functional, and then a gray water or a composting toilet, which is also very lovely and functional, but doesn't send human waste into our clean water, which is really important as we realize that only 1% of the world's water is available as fresh water, and that we're polluting it at such a rapid rate that our children and our grandchildren and people today all over the world are struggling with access to water, don't have enough. And so we're just trying to learn and demonstrate how we can do things that are pretty easy, pretty simple, really low cost, and just radically change, reorient the way that we live, so that we can be in harmony with each other and with the earth, and really improve our quality of life in a lot of ways. That is really the bottom line, and not economic growth to no end, sort of. So that's been a great learning experience, and so the water from the shower in the sink then goes out and waters some fruit trees, and so we planted some grapes, some raspberries, and fruit trees, and then the water goes underground basically and into these mulch basins, and so it's again really effortless because you don't have to take buckets and pour them onto your plants. In this case, you just get to wash your hands or take a shower, and the water flows right out into the roots of your plants. And we got help with this from Graywater Action, which graywateraction.org is a great resource for both composting toilets and gray water of all kinds. And I think one of the things that is really important in this moment is that we start to shift the way we think about green jobs, that it's not, it shouldn't be just about hard hats and building things, because we have a lot of things, and that part of what we need to do is learn how to live together and how to share, and how to do things in a more collective ways. So for example, if we could get the water off this building over here, this huge apartment building, and store it in a pond and grow a whole bunch of food from it, and take down the fence with our neighbors, increasingly take down fences around here, that we can begin to share the bounty of the resources that are coming off in all different ways. But right now, there's a lot of challenges in that, just as people who have grown up in capitalist and imperialist societies, where we are forced into this competitive, me, it's all about me first mentality, let me take care of me and my family, when really your life can be made much more enjoyable. As humans, we are social creatures, and so to take down a fence does require a little more communication and some skills in terms of mediating and figuring things out day to day, but in a bigger scale as well. But the rewards of that are just incredible. To have our children grow up in a community where they're held by more than just their parents, is really crucial. And so when I think about green jobs right now, that it makes me think that we need to shift to talking really about roles, and the kinds of roles that are needed in our communities to help us get through this transition are things like healers and therapists and counselors and body workers, to heal our bodies and our minds from the legacies of oppression and exploitation, but then also mediators and organizers and facilitators to help us to rebuild the structures that we can use to to make joint decisions, to be able to say, okay, this is where, this is what I want, but I also understand what you want, and